stopped the song, and it rolled loud and high over the lake. The king beneath the mountain, the king of carven stone, the lord of silver fountains shall come into his own. His crown shall be upholden, his harp shall be restrung, his hall shall echo golden to songs of yore re-sung. The wood shall wave on mountains and grass beneath the sun. His wealth shall flow in fountains and the rivers golden run. The streams shall run in gladness, the lakes shall shine and burn. All sorrow fails and sadness at the mountain king's return. So they sang, or very like that, only there was a great deal more of it, and there was much more shouting, as well as the music of harps or fiddles mixed up with it. Indeed, such excitement has not been known in the town in the memory of the oldest grandfather. The wood elves themselves began to wonder greatly, and even to be afraid. They did not know, of course, how Thorin had escaped, and they began to think their king might have made a serious mistake. As for the master, he saw that there was nothing else for it but to obey the general clamour, for the moment at any rate, and to pretend to believe that Thorin was what he said. So he gave up to his own great share, and set Fili and Kili beside him in places of honour. Even Bilbo was given a seat at the high table, and no explanation of where he came in, no songs that alluded to him in the obscurest way, was asked for in general bustle. Soon afterwards, the other dwarfs were brought into the town amid scenes of astonishing enthusiasm. They were all doctored and fed and housed and pampered in the most delightful and satisfactory fashion. A huge house was given up to Thorin and his company. Boats and rowers were put at their service. Crowds sat outside and sang songs all day, or cheered if any dwarf showed as much as his nose. Some of the songs were old ones, but some of them were quite new, and spoken confidently of the sudden death of the dragon, and of cargoes of rich presents coming down the river to Laketown. These were inspired largely by the master, and they did not particularly please the dwarves, but in the meantime they were well contented, and they quickly grew fat and strong again. Indeed, within a week they were quite recovered, fitted out in fine cloth of their proper colours, with beards combed and trimmed and proud steps. Thorin looked and walked as if the kingdom was already regained, and Smaug chopped up into little pieces. Then, as he had said, the dwarves' good feeling towards the little hobbit grew stronger every day. There were no more groans or grumbles. They drank his health, and they patted him on the back, and they made a great fuss of him, which was just as well, for he was not feeling particularly cheerful. He had not forgotten the look of the mountain, nor the thought of the dragon, and he had besides a shocking cold still. For 3 days he sneezed and coughed, and he could not go out, and even after his speeches at the banquets were limited to "Thank you very much." In the meanwhile, the wood elves had gone back up the forest river with their cargoes, and there was great excitement in the king's palace. I have never heard what happened to the chief of the guards and the butler. Nothing, of course, was ever said about keys or barrels while the dwarves stayed in Laketown, and Bilbo was very careful never to become invisible. Still, I dare say, more was guessed that was known, though doubtless Mr. Baggins remained a bit of a mystery. In any case, the king knew now the dwarves' errand, or thought he did, and he said to himself, very well, we'll see. No treasure will come back through Mirkwood without my having something to say in the matter, but I expect they will all come to a bad end, and serve them right. He, at any rate, did not believe the dwarves fighting and killing dragons like Smaug, and he strongly suspected attempted burglary or something like it, which shows he was a wise elf, and wiser than the men of the town, though not quite right, as we shall see in the end. He sent out his spies. He sent them about the shore of the lake, and as far northward as the mountain as they could go. And he waited. At the end of a fortnight, Thorin began to think of departure. While the enthusiasm still lasted in town was the time to get the help. It would not do to let everything cool down without delay. So he spoke to the master and his counsellors and said that soon he and his company must go on toward the mountain. Then, for the first time, the master was surprised and a little frightened, and he wondered if Thorin was after all really a descendant of the old kings. He had never thought that the dwarves would actually dare to approach Smaug, but believed they were frauds, who would sooner or later be discovered and be turned out. He was wrong. Thorin, of course, was really the grandson of the king under the mountain, and there was no knowing what a dwarf will not dare to do for revenge, or the recovery of his own. But the master was not sorry at all to let them go. They were expensive to keep, and their arrival had turned things in a long holiday in which business was at a standstill. Let them go and bother Smaug, and see how he welcomes them, he thought. Certainly, O Thorin, Thrain's son, Thror's son, was what he said. You must claim your own. The hour is at hand, spoken of old. What help we can offer shall be yours, and we trust to your gratitude when your kingdom is regained. So one day, although autumn was now getting far on, the winds were cold and leaves were falling fast, 3 large boats left Laketown, laden with rowers, dwarves, Mr. Baggins, and many provisions. Horses and ponies had been sent round by circuitous paths to meet them at the appointed landing place. The master and his councillors bade them farewell from the great steps of the town hall that went to the lake. People sang on the quays and out of windows. The white oars dipped and splashed. And off they went north, up the lake, on the last stage of their long journey. The only person thoroughly unhappy was Bilbo. End of chapter 10. Chapter 11. On the Doorstep. In 2 days' going, they rode right up the long lake and passed out into the river running. And now they could all see the lonely mountain towering grim and tall before them. The stream was strong, and their going slow. At the end of the 3rd day, some miles up the river, they drew in on the left, or western bank, and disembarked. Here they were joined by the horses and other provisions and necessaries, and the ponies for their own use that had been sent round to meet them. They packed what they could on the ponies, and the rest were made into a store under a tent. But none of the men of the town would stay with them, even for the night so near the shadow of the mountain. "Not at any rate until the songs have come true," said they. It was easier to believe in the dragon and less easy to believe in Thorin in these wild parts. Indeed, their stores had no need of any guard, for all the land was desolate and empty. So their escort left them, making off swiftly down the river and the shoreward paths, although the night was already drawing on. They spent a cold and lonely night, and their spirits fell. The next day they set out again. Balin and Bilbo rode behind, each leading another pony, heavily laden beside them. The others were some way ahead, picking out a slow road, for there were no paths. They made northwest, slanting away from the river running, and drawing ever nearer and nearer to a great spur of the mountain that was flung out southwards towards them. It was a weary journey, and a quiet and stealthy one. There was no laughter or song or sound of harps, and the pride and hopes which had stirred in their hearts the singing of the old songs by the lake, it died away to a plodding gloom. They knew that they were drawing near the end of their journey, and they knew it would be a terrible one. The land about them grew bleak and barren, though once, as Thorin told them, it had been green and fair. There was little grass, and before long there was neither bush nor tree, and only broken and blackened stumps to speak of, once long vanished. They had come to the desolation of the dragon, the desolation of Smaug, and they were come at the waning of the year. They reached the skirts of the mountain, all the same, without meeting any danger or any sign of the dragon, other than the wilderness that he had made about his lair. The mountain lay dark and silent before them, and ever higher than before. They made their first camp on the western side of the great southern spur, which ended in a height called Ravenhill. On this there had been an old watch-post, but they dared not climb it yet. It was too exposed. Before setting out to search the western spurs of the mountain for the hidden door, on which all their hopes rested, Thorin sent out a scouting expedition to spy out the land to the south, where the front gate stood. For this purpose he chose Balin and Fili and Killy, and with them went Mr. Bilbo. They marched under the grey and silent cliffs to the feet of Ravenhill. There the river, after winding in a wide loop over the valley of Dale, turned from the mountain on its road to the lake, flowing swift and noisily. Its bank was bare and rocky, tall and steep above the stream, and gazing out from over it, the narrow water foaming and splashing among many boulders, they could see, in the wide valley, shadowed by the mountain's arms, the grey ruins of ancient houses, towers, and walls. "There lies all that's left of Dale," said Balin. "The mountain sides were green with woods, and all the sheltered valley rich and pleasant in the days when the bells rang in that town." He looked both sad and grim as he said this. He had been one of Thorin's company on the day that the dragon had come. He was there. They did not dare to follow the river much further, not towards the gate, but they went out beyond the end of the southern spur, until lying hidden behind a rock they could look out and see the dark cavernous opening in the great cliff wall between the arms of the mountain. Out of it the waters of the river ran, and out of it too came a steam and a dark smoke. Nothing moved in the waste save the vapour and the water, and every now and again a black and ominous crow. The only sound was the sound of the stony water, and every now and again the harsh croak of a bird. Balin shuddered. "Let us return," he said. "We can do no more good here. I don't like these dark birds. They look like spies of evil." "The dragon is still alive, and in the halls under the mountain den, or I imagine it from the smoke," said the hobbit. "That does not prove it," said Balin. "Though I don't doubt you're right, Mr. Bilbo. But he might be gone away some time, or he might be lying out on the mountainside, keeping watch. And still I expect smokes and steams may come out of the gates. All the halls within must be filled with his foul reek." With such gloomy thoughts, followed ever by croaking crows over them, they made their weary way back to the camp. Only in June they had been guests in the fair house of Elrond, and though autumn was now crawling towards winter, the pleasant time now seemed years ago. They were alone in the perilous waste, without hope of further help. They were at the end of their journey, but as far as ever, it seemed, from the end of their quest. None of them had much spirit left. Now, strange to say, Mr. Baggins had more than the others. He would often borrow Thorin's map and gaze at it, pondering over the runes and the message of the moon letters Elrond had read. It was he that made the dwarves begin the dangerous search on the western slopes for the secret door. They moved their camp then to a long valley, narrower than the great dale in the south where the gates of the river stood, and walled with lower spurs of the mountain. Two of these here thrust forward west from the main mass of long steep-sided ridges that fell ever downward toward the plain. On this western side there were fewer signs of the dragon's marauding feet, and there were some grass for the ponies. From this western camp, shadowed by cliff wall until the sun began to sink towards the forest, day by day they toiled in parties, searching for paths up the mountainside. If the map was true, somewhere high above the cliff at the valley's head must stand the secret door. Day by day they came back to the camp, but without success. But at last, unexpectedly, they found what they were seeking. Philly and Killy and the hobbit went back one day down the valley and scrambled among the tumbled rocks to its southern corner. About midday, creeping behind the great stone that stood like a pillar, Bilbo came on what looked like rough steps going upwards. Following these, he and the dwarves found traces of a narrow track, often lost, often rediscovered, that wandered on to the top of the southern ridge and brought them at last still to a narrower ledge which turned north across the face of the mountain. Looking down, they saw what they were on top of a cliff at the valley's head, and were gazing down on their own camp below. Silently, clinging to the rocky wall on the right, they went in single file along the ledge, till the wall opened, and they turned into a little steep-walled bay, grassy-floored, still and quiet. Its entrance, which they had found, could not be seen from below because of the overhang of the cliff, nor from further off because it was so small that it looked like a dark crack and no more. It was not a cave, and was open to the sky above, but at its inner end a flat wall rose up, that in its lower part, close to the ground, was as smooth and upright as mason's work, but without a joint or crevice to be seen. No sign was there of post or lintel or threshold, nor any sign of bar or bolt or keyhole. Yet they did not doubt. They had found the door at last. They beat on it, they thrust it, they pushed it, they implored it to move, they spoke fragments of broken spells of opening. Nothing stirred. At last, tired out, they rested on the grass at its feet, and then at evening began their long climb down. There was excitement in the camp that night. In the morning they prepared to move once more. Only Bofur and Bombur were left behind to guard the ponies and such stores that they brought.